You know that feeling when you are driving home after years away, heart pounding with excitement about sharing your biggest success with the people who matter most. That was me 3 months ago, pulling into the parking lot of Grandma Rose's kitchen after selling my startup to Microsoft for $75 million. I had not seen my brother Marcus in 2 years, not since our parents' funeral turned into a disaster. But I thought money changes everything, right? I thought success would heal old wounds and prove I had not abandoned our family legacy. I was so naive. What happened next at that dinner table would shatter everything I believed about family, force me to make the hardest decision of my life, and ultimately teach me that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out who you really are. Before I dive into this story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you are ready for a tale about family betrayal and the sweetest revenge money can buy. Trust me, you will not see this ending coming. Growing up in suburban Denver, Marcus and I were inseparable. We spent summers helping our grandmother Rose in her kitchen, learning her secret recipes, and dreaming about carrying on the family tradition. When she passed away 10 years ago, she left us her restaurant, a cozy place on Colfax Avenue that had been serving comfort food to locals for 3 decades. Marcus took over immediately while I headed to Stanford to study computer science. Our parents were so proud when I graduated and landed a job at Google. They understood my passion for technology, even if it meant leaving the family business behind. For 2 years, I worked in Silicon Valley, sending money home whenever the restaurant struggled and calling every Sunday to catch up on family news. But everything changed when Mom and Dad died in that car accident 3 years ago. The funeral was when everything went wrong between Marcus and me. I flew home immediately, but Marcus was so consumed with grief and anger that he blamed me for not being there when they needed medical care. He said I had chosen my career over family, that I was selfish for living so far away. We had a terrible fight at the wake, and I left Denver that night thinking time would heal the wounds between us. After that, I threw myself into building my own company. I developed an AI platform that helped restaurants optimize their operations, manage inventory, and predict customer trends. The irony was not lost on me that I was creating technology to help businesses like the one my family owned. When Microsoft offered to acquire my startup for $75 million, I accepted immediately. This was my chance to prove to Marcus that I had not forgotten our roots, that my success could benefit our family legacy. I called Marcus to share the news and suggest we meet at Grandma Rose's kitchen. His voice was cold and distant when he answered, like he was talking to a stranger instead of his younger brother. When I mentioned wanting to celebrate my success and maybe invest in the restaurant, he laughed bitterly and said he did not need my charity. But he agreed to meet, probably curious about what I had to say after 2 years of silence. Walking into that restaurant felt like stepping into a time machine, except everything looked worn down and tired. The red vinyl booths were cracked, the lighting was dim, and there were maybe 6 customers in the entire place on a Friday night. This was not the bustling family restaurant I remembered from childhood. Marcus emerged from the kitchen wearing a stained apron, his face harder and leaner than I remembered. He did not smile when he saw me, just nodded toward a corner booth like I was any other customer. He introduced me to his girlfriend Sarah, a thin woman with suspicious eyes who looked me up and down like I was some kind of threat. Then came his friends Jake and Tommy, guys I vaguely remembered from high school, who now seemed to view me as some kind of outsider. Marcus sat down across from me and said, "So, little brother, come to show off your fancy life to the small-town folks?" The hostility in his voice hit me like a physical blow, and I realized this reunion was going to be much harder than I had imagined. I tried to start the conversation positively, talking about how proud I was that Marcus had kept Grandma Rose's legacy alive. But every word I said seemed to make him angrier. When I mentioned my startup success and suggested we could expand the restaurant, or maybe open a second location, Marcus slammed his hand on the table and accused me of thinking money could fix everything. "You were not here," he said, his voice rising loud enough for other customers to hear. "When Mom was in the hospital for 3 months, where were you? When Dad had his heart attack, where were you? You were in California playing with computers while I was here, dealing with real life, real responsibilities, real pain." I tried to explain that I had offered to come home, that I had sent money for medical bills, that I had called every day during their illnesses. But Marcus was not interested in my excuses. Sarah and his friends nodded along with everything he said, creating this wall of judgment around me. I felt like a defendant in a trial where the verdict had already been decided. The accusations kept coming. Marcus claimed I had been too busy to attend their anniversary dinner, too important to visit during holidays, too successful to care about my struggling family. Some of it was true. I had missed events because of work commitments, but I had tried to stay connected. I had tried to help in the ways I knew how. But sitting there in that booth, surrounded by hostile faces, I realized that my good intentions meant nothing to them. Then Marcus stood up and delivered the blow that would change everything between us forever. He pointed his finger directly at my face and said, "You know what, Arthur? You do not belong here anymore. You made your choice when you left us behind for your precious career. You chose money over family success, over loyalty. As far as I am concerned, you stopped being my brother the day you decided we were not good enough for you." The words hit me like bullets. Sarah smiled smugly while Jake and Tommy muttered their agreement. Other customers were staring now, witnessing this public humiliation of the brother who had dared to come home successful. I felt my face burn with embarrassment and anger, but more than that, I felt the deep ache of betrayal. This was not how family was supposed to treat family, no matter what mistakes had been made. I excused myself to use the bathroom, but really I needed a moment to think. Standing in that dingy restroom, looking at my reflection in the cracked mirror, I made a decision that would change both our lives forever. If Marcus wanted to treat me like an outsider, if he truly believed I did not belong in this family anymore, then maybe it was time to show him exactly what that meant. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. First to my lawyer in California, then to a commercial real estate agent I had worked with before. By the time I returned to the table, I had a plan forming in my mind. Marcus was still ranting to his friends about my selfishness, not even noticing that I had been gone for 20 minutes. When I sat down, I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "You know what, Marcus? You are absolutely right. Maybe it is time I stopped trying to belong somewhere I am clearly not wanted." He looked satisfied, like he had finally put me in my place. He had no idea what was coming next. I left the restaurant that night without saying goodbye, but I did not leave Denver. Instead, I checked into the Brown Palace Hotel downtown and spent the weekend working my phone like a Wall Street trader. My first call was to my lawyer, Patricia Rodriguez, who specialized in commercial acquisitions. I explained the situation and asked her to research the ownership structure of the building that housed Grandma Rose's kitchen. What she found was even better than I had hoped. The building was owned by Mountain Vista Properties, a mid-sized real estate company that was struggling financially due to some bad investments in office spaces. They had been quietly shopping the property for months without finding a buyer willing to meet their asking price of $3.8 million. Patricia arranged a meeting with their CEO for Monday morning. Walking into that boardroom wearing my best suit, I could see the desperation in their eyes before I even sat down. These were people who needed to close deals to keep their company afloat. I let them give their pitch about the property's potential, nodding politely as they showed me financial projections and renovation possibilities. Then I made them an offer they could not refuse, $5 million cash, with closing in 1 week. The room went silent. The CEO, a nervous man named Robert Chen, asked if I was serious. I pulled out my phone and showed him my bank account balance, then had Patricia explain that I could wire the money within 24 hours of signing. They tried to negotiate some terms, probably out of habit, but I made it clear this was a take-it-or-leave-it offer with a 48-hour expiration. They took it. While Patricia handled the legal paperwork, I hired a private investigator to research the restaurant's financial situation. What I discovered broke my heart and hardened my resolve at the same time. Marcus had been lying about the restaurant's success for years. They were 3 months behind on rent, owed money to suppliers, and had been surviving on credit cards and small loans from friends. The place was hemorrhaging money, and Marcus had been too proud to ask for help or admit he was failing. The investigator also uncovered something else Marcus had been telling people around town, that I had refused to help the family during our parents' illness, that I was too selfish and greedy to care about anyone but myself. He had been spreading these lies for 2 years, turning mutual friends and family acquaintances against me. The betrayal cut even deeper than his words at dinner. By Thursday afternoon, I owned the building. By Friday morning, I had met with Denver's top restaurant consultant and hired a crew to assess the current operation. They confirmed what I already knew: Grandma Rose's kitchen was failing not because of the location or the market, but because of poor management, outdated systems, and financial mismanagement. I spent the weekend planning my next move. This was not just about revenge anymore, though I would be lying if I said that was not part of it. This was about showing Marcus the consequences of burning bridges with someone who had always wanted to help. If he wanted to treat me like an enemy, then maybe it was time I acted like one. On Monday morning, I called the restaurant and asked Marcus to meet me there at 2 p.m. for an important discussion. I could hear the curiosity in his voice, maybe even a hint of hope that I was coming to apologize. He agreed to the meeting, probably expecting me to beg for forgiveness or make another offer to help that he could reject with righteous anger. Instead, I walked in wearing a tailored suit and carrying a leather briefcase flanked by Patricia and a commercial property manager I had hired. Marcus was behind the counter with Sarah, both of them looking confused by my formal appearance. The few customers in the restaurant sensed something important was happening and watched with interest. I did not waste time with pleasantries. "Marcus," I said, my voice calm and professional, "I want to inform you that as of this morning, I am the new owner of this building." I placed the deed and ownership papers on the counter where he could see them clearly. The color drained from his face as he picked up the documents and read them. Sarah grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with shock. "What does this mean?" she whispered, though I think she already knew. "It means," I continued, "that your lease agreement was with the previous owners, and that lease is now subject to my approval as the new landlord. It also means that the 3 months of back rent you owe, totaling $22,000, is now owed to me personally." Marcus looked up from the papers, his face a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. "Arthur, what are you doing? This is our family restaurant. This is Grandma Rose's legacy." I nodded calmly. "You are right, it was our family restaurant. But as you made very clear to me last week, I do not belong in this family anymore. Since I am no longer your brother, I see no reason to treat you any differently than any other tenant who is behind on rent and facing eviction." The next few minutes were chaos. Marcus begged, Sarah screamed, and the customers quickly left as they realized they were witnessing a family drama that was about to turn very ugly. Marcus promised he could catch up on the rent if I just gave him more time, but we both knew he did not have $22,000 and no way to get it quickly. I let him plead for a while, then pulled out a folder with the financial investigation my team had conducted. "Marcus, I know about the credit card debt, the unpaid suppliers, the loans from Jake and Tommy. You are not just behind on rent, you are drowning. This restaurant has been failing for over a year, and you have been lying to everyone about it." His face went red with embarrassment and anger. "How dare you spy on me? How dare you use your money to destroy what our family built?" "I am not destroying anything," I replied calmly. "I am simply choosing not to subsidize a failing business run by someone who has made it clear he does not want my help or my presence in his life. You wanted me to stop acting like your brother. Congratulations, Marcus. You got your wish." I handed him an eviction notice that Patricia had prepared. "You have 30 days to vacate the premises. After that, I will be renovating this space and reopening it under new management with a new name, Arthur's Legacy." The name hit him like a physical blow. Our grandmother had always said that her restaurant was her legacy to the family, a gift that would keep giving for generations. Now I was claiming that legacy for myself, erasing his connection to it forever. Sarah started crying, asking how I could be so cruel to my own family. But I was past caring about their tears or their accusations. Marcus had taught me that family was conditional, that love could be withdrawn when someone disappointed you. Well, I was simply applying the same logic he had used on me. "There is one way you can stay," I said, watching hope flicker in Marcus's eyes. "You can work for me as a regular employee, at minimum wage, following the policies and procedures I establish. You would report to the general manager I hire, follow the recipes and systems I implement, and treat me with the respect you would show any boss." The offer was deliberately humiliating, and we both knew it. Marcus would go from owner to employee in his own family restaurant, taking orders from his younger brother, who he had tried to cast out of the family. It was poetic justice, but it was also incredibly cruel. Marcus stood there for a long moment, his pride warring with his desperation. Finally, he threw the eviction notice on the floor and said, "I would rather work at McDonald's than work for you." "That can be arranged too," I replied. I happened to know the franchise owner of several locations around town. He stormed out with Sarah clinging to his arm, leaving me alone in the restaurant that now belonged entirely to me. I should have felt victorious, but instead I felt hollow. This was not how I had imagined my homecoming would end, with my brother as my enemy and our family legacy torn apart by pride and stubbornness. Over the next month, I threw myself into transforming the restaurant. I hired Denver's best restaurant design firm to give the place a complete makeover while preserving the vintage charm that made it special. I brought in a renowned chef from Los Angeles to redesign the menu, keeping Grandma Rose's classic recipes, but elevating them with modern techniques and presentation. The grand reopening of Arthur's Legacy was a massive success. Food critics from Denver's major newspapers gave rave reviews. The place was booked solid for weeks. Local business leaders wanted to meet the tech entrepreneur who had returned home to honor his family's culinary tradition. I was featured in magazine articles and invited to speak at entrepreneurship conferences about combining innovation with heritage. But every night when I locked up the restaurant and drove back to my luxury apartment downtown, I felt the weight of what I had lost in gaining my revenge. Marcus was working at a chain restaurant across town, barely making ends meet. Sarah had left him unable to handle the stress and embarrassment of their sudden downfall. Jake and Tommy, the friends who had supported Marcus against me now, called regularly asking if I had any job openings. Success, I was learning, could be just as isolating as failure. 6 months after taking over the restaurant, I met Jessica Martinez at a community service event. She was volunteering at a food bank serving meals to homeless families, and something about her genuine warmth drew me to her table. When she asked what I did for work, I almost lied and said I was just a restaurant owner. But she had this way of looking at people like she could see through pretense, so I told her the whole truth. Jessica listened to my story without judgment, asking thoughtful questions about my motivations and my feelings throughout the ordeal. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment before saying, "It sounds like you won the battle but lost the war." Her words haunted me for weeks. I had proven I was successful, powerful, capable of destroying anyone who crossed me. But what had I actually accomplished? My brother hated me more than ever. Our family legacy was built on spite instead of love, and I was more alone than I had ever been in my life. Jessica and I started dating, and she became the mirror that helped me see what I had become. She never criticized my actions directly, but she would ask questions that forced me to examine my choices. "Do you think your grandmother would be proud of how you used her legacy? What do you think your parents would say about the relationship between their sons? When you look back on this in 20 years, will you be satisfied with how it ended?" Those questions ate at me until I could not ignore them anymore. I had become the very thing I accused Marcus of being: someone who let pride and anger destroy family bonds. I had used my success as a weapon instead of a bridge, chosen revenge over reconciliation, power over love. One evening in November, almost a year after that terrible dinner, I drove to the chain restaurant where Marcus worked. I sat in my car in the parking lot for an hour, watching him through the window as he took orders and cleaned tables. He looked older, tired, defeated. This was not the brother I remembered from childhood, the one who had taught me to ride a bike and protected me from neighborhood bullies. When his shift ended, I followed him to the bus stop. Denver had gotten its first snow of the season, and Marcus was shivering in a thin jacket as he waited for the late bus. I pulled up next to the stop and rolled down my window. "Get in," I said. "It is too cold to wait for the bus." He looked at me suspiciously, but the wind was picking up and the next bus was not due for 20 minutes. Finally, he got in the passenger seat, keeping his body angled away from me like he was ready to jump out at any moment. We drove in silence for a few blocks before I said I was wrong, Marcus. About everything. He did not respond, just stared out the window at the falling snow. "I bought the restaurant to hurt you," I continued. "I wanted you to feel the same rejection and humiliation you made me feel. But I realize now that what I did was worse than anything you said to me." Finally, he spoke. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because someone I care about helped me understand that winning is not the same as being right, and being right is not the same as being good." I pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour diner and turned off the engine. "I want to give you the restaurant back, Marcus. Not as a gift or charity, but as partners. Real partners this time, with legal agreements and clear responsibilities and mutual respect." He turned to look at me then, and I saw tears in his eyes. Why would you do that? After everything I said to you, everything I put you through, because you are my brother, I said simply. And because Grandma Rose's legacy should belong to both of us the way she always intended. We talked until sunrise really talked for the first time in years. Marcus admitted that his anger had been driven by grief and fear more than genuine hatred. He had been overwhelmed by the responsibility of caring for our parents, running the restaurant, and maintaining our family's reputation all by himself. When I became successful in California, he felt abandoned, and jealous emotions he covered with righteous anger about my absence. I apologized for not being more present during our parents' illness, for not understanding the pressure he was under for using my success as a weapon instead of a tool for healing. We both cried, we both forgave, and we both committed to rebuilding not just our business partnership, but our relationship as brothers. It took months to work out all the details, but eventually we restructured Arthur's legacy as a joint venture. Marcus handles the day-to-day operations and kitchen management areas where his experience and passion shine. I focus on the business strategy, technology systems, and expansion planning. We kept the name Arthur's Legacy, but added a subtitle, honoring Rose Martinez's family tradition. Jessica was right as she usually is. I had won the battle by destroying my brother, but I only won the war when I chose to rebuild him. Success means nothing if you have no one to share it with, and family is not something you can buy or sell or own. It is something you choose to nurture or choose to destroy with every decision you make. Sometimes the greatest victory is not proving you are right, but choosing to be the bigger person. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to choose between being right and being kind? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about family forgiveness and finding your way back home. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that it is never too late to choose love over pride. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that the best legacies are not built on revenge, but on the courage to admit when you are wrong and the wisdom to make it right.